Hey everybody, it's Ken McElroy here, and I've got my friend Eric Freeman. Hey Eric.
Hey, Ken.
For you guys may have seen Eric on here before. Eric's firm he's with is BeachFleischman, and he's a senior tax advisor there. He's a CPA. He has his master's in accounting, and he basically does our corporate and personal tax returns, of which, gosh, it's got to be over 100 of them now, right, Eric?
Yeah, keeping us very busy. A lot of
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Us and many other clients, but I'm your favorite for sure.
Absolutely, Ken.
So anyway, we meet every quarter, and tax planning is a big piece, and so Eric, thanks. I know we're right in the middle of April here, but I wanted to get a video out for for our viewers because there's a lot happening in these stimulus packages, for businesses that just got nailed, right? And so I wanted you to kind of articulate from a tax side, and what's available, because a lot of these are being handled through CPA firms like yourself, and so let's first talk about, whether you're a business or you're self-employed or you're an independent contractor. These things are called PPP and EIDL, what's your paycheck protection program, and economic injury disaster loans. Like, it's super confusing, all this money coming down. And also, if you could, I'm hearing that like a lot of the banks don't like these. They're, the federal government's saying, hey, let's do this, and the banks are like going, I don't know if I want to, give out all this money, in a non-collateralized forgivable loan. So there's this interesting pushback. So let's first talk about the whole package, and why it's rolling out, because I'll tell you, I have a lot of, no, my one, I'm affected. I own a resort. We had to shut down, and of course we still have we have to still all pay all the operating expenses. Same thing with our apartment buildings. Same thing with our other companies. I have friends that own retail centers and commercial shopping centers. And those small businesses are done. They're gone. They're shut down, and so there's some real pain out there. These are really helpful. So what's a good way to start? Where do you start with all this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's definitely confusing, and it's confusing to the professionals too. It was essentially, you know, drafted overnight and came out, and so a lot of it is that banks are trying to figure out how to really interpret it. CPAs are trying to figure out how to interpret it, and everyone's got has a different situation. So, but the purpose of it was really kind of twofold. One was to keep as many people employed as possible by providing incentives to businesses and the ability for businesses to do so when they've shut down and can't operate like they used to. And then two is to keep the businesses afloat, because if they can retain as many employees as possible, then when this passes, hopefully businesses will have made it through and be able to open up quicker and get our economy a little more jump started. So that was kind of the thought process behind some of these incentives in the first place. So when you're looking at them, there's two main ones that you just mentioned: the Paycheck Protection Program, and that is essentially $349 billion that's been authorized, to give out to businesses, and it's based on how much payroll you essentially have had over the past year. And so if you apply for it through the banks, it's fully backed by the Small Business Administration, no guarantees, like you said. So it's very beneficial. There's a low interest rate, 1%. You have you don't have to make payments for potentially 6 months after you receive the proceeds. And the biggest part of it is it actually, in a way, acts more like a grant than it would be a loan, because if you use the proceeds to pay your payroll and make other business type expenses, like the ones that are specifically designated, like mortgage interest and utilities, then and you spend it on those items within 8 weeks after you receive it, then you are fully forgiven on those amounts. So it's a big incentives for businesses to try and keep as many employees on the payroll as possible, so it helps everyone else out. It kind of trickles down, and so potentially those employees can keep, buying food from the grocery stores, keep paying rent, their own mortgages, things like that. So that's just one of the incentives.
So before you move on, so you said something really subtly there that caught my ear, which was it's more like a grant, and it's kind of framed up as a loan, right?
Right.
And so really, why don't you just explain the difference there because it's a massive difference.
Right. So, I mean, a loan, like most people know, is something that has to be paid back, and generally with additional interest. Versus what they're doing on this incentive by forgiving it potentially is you don't have to pay it back. It's money that you're getting for your business, that also is tax free, so you don't have to pay tax on that forgiven amount, which is huge. Generally, if you have a loan forgiven, that's a taxable event. So you don't have to pay that back. So that's another incentive. If you're able to keep employees on the payroll for another 8 weeks, and I'll add, you can't reduce your payroll after that. So I mean, the point isn't to just give you free money and then pay payroll for 8 weeks and then just lay everyone off at that point. You have to keep them on the payroll afterwards, because that's really the entire purpose of it, is to keep as many people employed as possible.
So it says that the loans are allowed up to $10 million.
Yeah, up to 10 million, and it's based off you look at your last 12 months and whatever your average monthly payroll cost was. So any cost to employees, then you take 2.5 times that, and that's your loan amount up to 10 million.
That's incredible. But what I'm hearing, so two things. One, we already applied for all these, and we got rejected by one bank that we deal with, and we have 100 bank accounts with them, just because they said, hey, we don't want anything to do with these.
Yeah.
And so then we went to our other bank, and we submitted them last week. What's interesting is that these banks don't want these loans, and that's what I'm hearing. They're like, well, why would I give the money to some? Why would I do a grant? That's no one's ever going to pay me back on, right? It's just not the way banks work.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of work. One, setting it all up. They had to essentially set it up overnight. We got this. The CARES Act came out not last Friday, but the Friday before. Banks weren't even ready to accept applications until a week later, and some still are trying to get set up. So there's a lot of setup that goes into it for these loans.
Yeah, I'm telling you, the two banks that we work with are national. They're big banks. These are, and we got one that just said, hey, we're not dealing with them right now, period. And it was pretty shocking, but whatever, you move on to the next one. I was talking to a friend this morning. He told me that he called in and he was caller number 1200. He was on hold. You know what I mean? So right. The demand, he goes, I was on hold for hours and I just eventually hung up. So they're just not set up for the volume here either. That's another big deal. It's one thing to just create this and then push it down, but it's quite another to get it out to the people.
Yeah, and it's it's a race, because there's only 349 billion sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about the entire U.S. economy, it's going to run out quick. So yeah, people are trying to jump on it and do it as quick as possible. And one of the unusual things about it too is that a lot of businesses are forced to apply earlier than they otherwise would have, because obviously restaurants and things that were mandated to be shut down in a lot of states are clearly affected, but there's other businesses that may not have been affected quite that drastically yet. But with everything else going on, landlords, other businesses that maybe are not so much in the public, they're gonna probably see their revenue affected, and you don't know to what extent yet. But if you don't apply now, then you're not going to get it. So it's really one of those now or never type situations.
Right. I know. And you basically got to get in line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's very, very interesting. No, thank you. So that's the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. Let's talk about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That's another stimulus package. Walk me through that.
Yeah, so this one had actually been around before this whole COVID-19, but they changed a lot of the requirements in terms of it because of the current crisis. So now it's again, you don't have any type of personal guarantees. It's a streamlined process, so you're getting approved potentially just on your credit. Um, so those that are eligible for it are essentially yeah, businesses that have expenses that had this crisis not happened or disaster not happened, then they would have been able to make their payments. But because it happened, so they've lost some revenue, they can't make those payments. That makes you essentially eligible to apply for this other loan. And so you don't need payroll for this one like you do for the
Oh,
PPP.
okay. That's a big deal.
So this is good for this, like real estate would be
Yeah.
more prone to doing the economic injury disaster loan because of that. And then the other interesting thing about it is you do get you can request up to a $10,000 advance on it. And they're supposed to get that out to you within 3 business days. I don't know if they'll actually be able to keep
Yeah.
up with the volume.
Good luck with that.
Right, because with all the applications, but yeah, potentially a $10,000 advance, and that does not have to be repaid either. So that's a grant, and even if your loan application gets denied afterwards, you still don't have to pay back the $10,000 grant. So that's another incentive out there, and you can get up to $2 million under that loan program, which was expanded. I think it was 500 before that. So yeah, it's a pretty big benefit, and you also have very favorable terms on the loan. 3.75% if you're a for-profit, 2.75 if you're a nonprofit, and up to potentially 30 years.
Yeah, I see that. That's incredible. So interesting. So we talked about the PPP and now the EIDL. Can you get both?
Yeah. So originally people thought that maybe you couldn't, but it did get clarified that you can get both. You just have to be aware that you can't use the proceeds from both to try and cover the same expenses. You
I
can't try
see.
and double dip on it. So you need to be able to have enough expenses to use both. And if you get the $10,000 grant from the EIDL, that will reduce the amount that is forgiven under the PPP. So it's still essentially you're still getting the same amount forgiven, just something to be aware of.
Okay. So what's interesting, I don't think I knew, is so if you're an independent contractor, with no employees, this is a great option for you, right?
Yes, yeah, you can do the IDL, and I guess I should also clarify on the PPP. If you are self-employed, so you have self-employment type income, they are saying you can now apply for those types of situations as well, and that's basically the amount of the loan in that case is basically 1 month of what your self-employment type earnings would have been
Okay.
during that time.
Very, very good. Thank you. So who can apply for these, Eric? Who's eligible, who is not?
Yeah. So for the PPP, you're looking at businesses that are defined as a small business, 500 or fewer employees, and if you own multiple businesses, you might have to look at them in total to determine how many employees you have, and sole proprietors, any self-employed, independent contractors, anyone like that is eligible to apply for them. And the EIDL, again, it's small businesses. You can apply again, sole proprietor, independent contractor, as long as you've got a business. It's not meant
Okay.
for like personal, to replace personal type income or pay personal expenses.
I see. I see. Well, one more reason to have an entity, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Before it was for tax protection, and now yeah, now it's for, for quite another thing. But so how do they access the money? How do they fill out the applications? How do they walk through this? Because I can only imagine these applications are pretty onerous.
Well, the interesting thing is, so the Paycheck Protection Program, that one's a little more work. You definitely need to submit backup documentation verifying your payroll, previous tax returns. The banks have their own applications, but there is one that was released from the Small Business Administration, and most banks have kind of taken that and made it their own. So that one is a little more, but you apply through your bank, not through the SBA. The EIDL, that one is a much more streamlined one. You just go onto the Small Business Administration website. They have a link set up for the application, and it's 4 relatively short pages. That one's pretty streamlined. You basically fill out the name of the business, your name, addresses, your ownership, your last 12 months of revenue, certify that you're not fraudulent, things like that, and submit it. So that one, if you've got all that information available, it's a 5 to 10 minute application. So much more streamlined than the PPP is.
Okay, and if we direct people to you, would you be able to help?
We have some resources, some pamphlets that can help direct people on where to go, and some basic information for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll put a link to the BeachFleischman website, and they can go there. The businesses can go there and help kind of navigate through this, because in addition to that, there's going to be lots of questions around the money itself, and taxable, forgivable, the interest rates and how all that works, and the allocations. So, I mean, this is going to be, that's a super gray area, like if you get both of these, you have to make sure that it goes to the right bucket, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Cause that, it's super important that this is done really cleanly after the money's received, and hopefully the money's received soon. Eric, thanks again. I know you're busy. We're right before tax season, which, well, I guess got bumped a little bit.
Yeah, lucky us, right?
Yeah. But still, you guys are really busy right now. I know there's a lot happening, and these laws keep changing. So as we start to continue to navigate these things are changing daily. We'll jump back on and help our viewers. So I can't thank you enough, and be safe. We're doing all these Zoom now, so we're also trying to do our part of being safe. And Eric, thanks again. Really, really much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Happy to help get the information out
All
there.
right, buddy. Stay safe. See ya.
You
Bye-bye.
too.